Hello everyone, I'm Leroy Harris, Programming Librarian here at the New Ulm Public Library, and I'm very happy to welcome you back to our second annual Stories for the Season. This year we've done a great collaboration together with the State Street Theater, NUCAT, and we're very excited to have the Brown County Historical Society joining us this year to provide us with our reading material. All of the readings that you'll be hearing come from the Brown County Historical Archives. And so they'll include letters, personal remembrances, newspaper clippings, as well as some fun recipes. We hope you enjoy these stories for the season.
Hi everyone, I'm Brenda Nielsen. Sometimes you'll see me at State Street Theater, and sometimes you'll see me with Brown County Public Health when I do some volunteering, and sometimes you'll see me here. Well, I'm here to tell you today that I like to bake, especially during the holidays. You know, I also watch cooking shows, all of them. I like to collect cookbooks, and I really love to make holiday cookies. In fact, I've made as many as 14 different kinds at one for a Christmas celebration. Not quite so many anymore, but I really like to make them. I grew up in a Scandinavian community in northern Minnesota, so I was really used to things like lefse and sandbakels and krumkaka and fatiman. Well, then I moved to New Ulm, and there was a whole bunch of different things that I had never heard of. The thought of things like putting prunes in something just seemed to be really foreign to me. Well, anyway, I did try some of those things when I got here, because that's what you do when you move into a new community. And I found that some of them were really delicious. So today I want to share a couple of recipes with you from the more German community. The first one I have is, of course, the all familiar Schmierkuchen. Now I can tell you, Schmierkuchen sounded like a pretty strange name. And then when I found out that it had prunes and cottage cheese in it, that was really unusual for me. But Alice Krizmarzik, she had a really great recipe in one of these cookbooks. It looks like it was maybe a church cookbook for her Schmierkuchen. So I thought, let's try that. So let me tell you how you make that. You start out with an unbaked 9-inch pie shell. Now, in the recipe, it doesn't tell you how to make the pie shell, but I can tell you that flour and shortening and a little cold water usually will do it. And I've got a secret for you. Another great way is you could, at the dairy department in the grocery store, there's these red boxes, and in there are 2 rolled up pie shells that you can just roll them out and put them in your pie plate, and you don't even have to use a rolling pin. Well, that's a great idea if you don't want to make your own pie crust. Well, once you get this pie shell straightened out, then what you do is you boil a cup of prunes. I think you probably would put a little bit of water in there. The recipe doesn't say, but I bet you would put just a little tiny bit of water in there. And you boil them until they get soft. And when they cool, you mash them up until they're nice and smooth. Now here's the rest of the recipe. You take half a cup of whipping cream, 3/4 of a cup of sugar, 2 tablespoons of flour, 3 eggs, and a tablespoon of vanilla. And you put all that stuff in a blender or a food processor, whatever, and you mix it up until it's nice and smooth. Now here's the part of the recipe that seemed very strange to me. You put 2.5 cups of cottage cheese in that mixture, and you pulsate your food processor or your blender until it's smooth. Now you pour that in your unbaked pie shell, and then you spread your prune mixture over the top of it. You bake this in a 400-degree oven for about 20 minutes, and then you turn the oven down to about 350, and you bake it for another 30 minutes. When it's warm, you take a powdered sugar icing, you know, the one where you mix up powdered sugar and a little water or a little cream or something, and you mix it all up until it's a spreading consistency. And you kind of just spread that over the warm kuchen. I've got to tell you, it's really a good recipe. And if you have time, I'd certainly try something like that. I think if you go to our community in New Ulm, you probably would find at least 1,000 different recipes for Schmierkuchen, but I think Alice's is pretty special. The next recipe I want to share with you is one that's a little more German, Scandinavian. I think every ethnic group makes this kind of a bread. It's called Christmas Stollen. Our Brown County Historical Society found this recipe. They must save cookbooks because many of these recipes came from them. And this one, for Christmas Stollen, came from Meg Sturm. And then it was submitted by Monica Sturm. I remember her. I used to be friends with her. She was a great knitter and a really good baker. Well, this Christmas Stollen goes like this. You take a cup of water, 2 cakes of yeast, or 2 packages of that dry yeast, and you put that dry yeast in a little bit of water, about 1/3 of a cup with a little sugar, and let it proof. That means you just let it bloom for a while to make sure that the yeast is going to work. Because there's nothing worse in the world than if you have you're going to make bread and your yeast isn't working. So you want to try it out a little bit. You take 1/4 of a cup of shortening, 1/4 of a teaspoon of nutmeg, a teaspoon of orange rind, 7 cups of flour, a cup of mixed candied fruit, a cup of scalded milk that's cooled to lukewarm, a little more sugar, about 1/3 of a cup, a teaspoon of salt, a teaspoon of lemon rind, 3 eggs, a cup of slivered almonds, and a cup of white raisins. Now, the recipe says to mix all of that stuff together. I bet really what you could do is you could leave out the almonds and put those on the top when you're going to bake the Stollen. But anyway, you process all this stuff. You have to put it in a fairly large bowl because 7 cups of flour is a lot of flour. Once you've got that all mixed up, you take the dough out and you divide it into 3 pieces. And then each one of those pieces you divide into 3 more pieces. So in essence, you have 9 pieces of dough. And you roll 3 pieces of dough out at a time and you braid them. And you can make these braids and then you bake them. You put them in the oven at a temperature of about 325 to 350. And you bake them for about 1/2 an hour or so. And when they're cooled, you can frost them with a powdered sugar icing or a little powdered sugar, and you can decorate them with candied cherries or those slivered almonds. Christmas Stollen is one of those baking creations that seems to be very, very popular with, again, all kinds of cultures in the world. I have some of my family who live in Germany, and I can tell you Stollen is one of the main Christmas treats that they have there. So I'm encouraging you to dig out one of those cookbooks if you have one at your house and do a little baking. Those old church cookbooks, those ones that come from organizations, are great. Also, sometimes if you look or you ask one of your relatives, they might have a favorite recipe that's been handed down in your family. So pick it up, take it to the kitchen, and do a little baking. Make something special. And then when you do that, enjoy the holidays. Enjoy the sounds, the smells, and all of the fun things that you can do preparing for Christmas. So again, enjoy the holidays and happy baking.